Okay, John, so you and I got into it a little bit there before the break. I'm not sure we see completely eye to eye. I want to go back to something that you said in the first part of the show a little bit early on, talking about just the defensive abilities of this team, that you actually thought they performed up a little bit. And I'm not sure that necessarily they performed up as much as this positionless sort of starting lineup that we're going to see in game one, and conceivably a lot through the year with Brown and Tatum and Hayward and Horford and Kyrie. I mean, they really can all switch onto just about anybody. So, I'm just thinking of like all these kinds of different matchups and whatnot, and specifically maybe even we'll see in game one, but obviously Cleveland's going to play the Celtics 4 times this year. You mentioned their sort of limited nature where they have players who aren't necessarily good at both ends of the floor, and maybe they're a little bit more stuck into their positions and they don't move around. What about a guy like Jay Crowder that we'll see on Tuesday night, who's most likely going to be playing the 4 for Cleveland? In that case, how do you think the Celtics handle or take advantage of their positionless team and attack somebody like Crowder to keep him out, and even LeBron, because they really can't, they don't have to worry. They just switch and switch and switch and switch. And so finding a mismatch against this team is going to be more difficult. Will there still be mismatches? Yeah, there will, because some of these guys aren't necessarily like in an ISO. I can see it. Hey, you know what? LeBron goes into ISO and he just takes Brown. Right, we're still going to have scenarios where they get beat, but in any kind of motion offense where things are moving around, you really don't have a soft spot to attack the team, except this guy is a little bit worse defender than this guy over here, but they all have the length to move around.
It's so hard when we talk about Cleveland too, because like the freak of nature that is LeBron James, it's like, how can anybody matching up with LeBron James is like, seems unfair. You get the Monstars involved, and then maybe, okay, we got something we can talk about. But, with LeBron, it's very difficult to say, okay, well, you get the right matchup. But as much as we can, let's try to pull them out of it. You're absolutely right, though. Like, the ability, and we see this against teams that even have much more length. Like, I think Charlotte and Philly were actually great. Two teams that were great to match up with, because they both have a lot of length, much more than the Celtics do. And the Celtics, even then, you could see that the added length they've added from last year to this year made such a difference. They were able to contest things that Dario Saric is putting together and Okafor. And when you get the wrong matchup, at least you have a 6'8" guy who's going to be guarding a guy like Okafor or a player of that caliber, Rashawn Holmes. It's a 6'8" guy that's going to get switched up on him. It's not going to be 6'2" Avery Bradley that just doesn't have a chance. And that's kind of the differential. And it was really interesting. I was listening to the Celtics Talk podcast from CSN. Actually, it's not CSN. It's NBC Sports Boston, something like that. Anyway, Kyle Draper and Sherrod.
NBCSN, right?
Yeah. Change it. Bring me back Sports Channel is what I'm looking for. So anyway, they were talking, and Sherrod was talking about how he was relating to a story he had heard from some scouts that were saying Danny figured it out. And what they were trying to kind of say there is that the hidden secret of Tatum was that he could defend. His length was really sneaky. Now, he has some sneaky length, and he's such a smooth athlete, not freak athlete, but just smooth athlete, that in the right system, Brad Stevens, they would be able to unlock him and make him not just a decent defender, a really good defender. And I think that was what Sherrod was saying, is we're already starting to see the signs of that. And that's what we're, kind of to your point though, Justin, is that's absolutely the case. Like, is he going to be able to do everything right opening night? No, but he's going to have the tools. And you've seen some of the blocks and his ability to alter shots as people get near the rim, get rebounds, kind of help on the defensive boards.
I was actually thinking the steals.
Big issue.
Well, there you go. Steals, because when that length, like you said, he's a smooth athlete, and I don't think people quite expect him at 6'8". He's maybe 6'9", but at that length, they don't necessarily believe that he can get his hands in there, and he's a great ball handler. So when he does go after the steal, it's not only is he deceptively quick, but he's also deceptively long, and immediately he corrals the steal and gets heading up the floor. And I think a lot of times when, without gambling, I guess is the best point to make. There's a lot of times you see players do that, but they're gambling, and so then all of a sudden they open up maybe their left side, and the player, if they retain the ball when the player gambles on the steal, they just blow right by the defender. But I feel like he can stay sort of on balance, on his toes, and still make a play for that, knock it loose, and then with the ball handling, he can get up the floor. But yes, you're right. He can alter some shots, and there's some things, but I also think because he's so good with the ball in his hands, the couple of steals that we saw, especially in that last game against Charlotte, there's one that really sticks out in my mind where he just knocked the ball away and started heading down the floor. And I don't think he finished the play. I don't think he was able to finish it, and it wound up coming the other way, and they wound up getting an easy bucket. But still, the point being, you have somebody like Jaylen Brown who's a freak athlete who does all of these things, but he's not necessarily as smooth as Tatum. But then Tatum has this freak length and becomes deceptively quick because he's such a smooth athlete. So they all have different things. That's what makes Brad Stevens so great, is he'll put them in the right position and teach them, and that may be the other part where we're really hoping for extra practices this year. He'll be able to teach them how to use it properly.
Absolutely, and that's, I think, the sponge that is Jayson Tatum. I mean, that we're going to see that night after night after night. He's going to get more playing time, I think, because I think than we saw from, say, Jaylen Brown a year ago, simply because of the different skills that he brings. Even if he slides down the depth chart a little bit, I was thinking that, well, there might be nights he's not in it, and a guy like Shimmy gets more time, or you may see, Yabusele, or, who knows. After watching exhibition, and of course it's kind of like what I saw last, so you always hesitate to kind of attach too much to that. But man, there's just so many skills that he brings. It just seems difficult for me that he would ever fall completely out of the rotation, as we saw at times, in part to Jaylen Brown. Could I see him falling out of the starting lineup? Absolutely. I mean, whether it's Baines,
to Morris.
To Morris, either one. I mean, I still think Baines, there's some nights they may throw him out there, but you're right. I mean, and what's that really saying? Morris is a guy who is a veteran who can hit threes and switch and do all the things Tatum can do, but certainly without the upside and the real athletic or fundamentally strong offensive skill that Jayson Tatum can provide. He doesn't have that, but he's solid. And they're going to rely on that. At some point, he's going to get his starts. But Tatum is the one that I'm floored by every night, every time I watch him.
I think it actually would make a lot of sense to leave this starting lineup alone just the way that it is, to be honest with you, because of what you said before about the depth on that second unit. Having some veterans like Baines, like Morris to go out there with Terry and Marcus could go a long way for this club and really stay the course, because what are they going to do in the starting lineup with Kyrie, Horford, and Hayward anyway, right? We might actually underutilize them to a degree. Maybe not Baines as much, but I could see them underutilizing Morris in that lineup. Like, he may fit better with Marcus Smart, having Marcus Smart and Marcus Morris on that leading kind of, a defense on that second unit. Terry gives them a left offensively. Morris still, obviously is a good offensive player and can knock down. I think he's still more of a mid-range guy too, and that might be where you run into trouble having him and Baines out there at the same time. But either way, I just think having a little bit of experience on that second unit would definitely help. And again, it's not like you're just swapping out 5 for a new 5. You're obviously rotating, players. So it might be the kind of thing where, you leave the starting lineup the way we're going to see it. The first substitution is to pull out Tatum and slot in Morris, and then that begins the transition towards the second unit. Marcus Smart comes in shortly after that, and then they start doing their thing where the end of the first quarter and then beginning of the second quarter happens.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see which they've done a lot with Hayward and Kyrie, and I think they're going to try to keep one of those two on the floor at all times as really the primary either scorer or distributor, which to me in some part kind of makes me uncomfortable, because I like the more opportunities they give to Marcus Smart in that role, I think he flourishes and seems to take off with it. But it never hurts to have more people who can put the ball in their hands and create plays for others. So it's not it's a minor issue, but I think that's something that will be interesting. Is as you said, the timing of who do you pull off first. Who gets maybe that first run to kind of let the second unit run under their control, and then who's filling in their spot with in large part the first unit as they kind of get their rest before they come back in. I'm interested to see how they do that. As you said, maybe it's Hayward who kind of gets that first run. We saw that in the game against the first game, I should say, against Charlotte, where there was a second quarter where he went supernova there for about 2 minutes. Maybe he gets the first shot at that. Either way, look, they're way better than where they were a year ago, where IT comes off the floor and we were just saying, oh dear God, how much longer can we last without him on the court, because nobody else can score.